Mayor Wilson, give me a second. I'm gonna start live streaming and record
No problem.
the meeting.
No problem. No problem.
Mayor Wilson, we are live streaming the meeting and we're also recording the meeting. We can start our proceeding.
Okay, great. So I'm going to call the meeting to order, the PPC committee, Planning and Programming Committee for June 25th. I appreciate everyone bearing with me not being there. I'm trying to be in two places at once today. So, and as I mentioned, I'll chair the meeting until about 20 till 6, and then I have to drop off to chair a council meeting. All right. Can we call the roll, please?
Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Here.
Board Member DeFranti.
Here.
Mayor Davis Younger.
Here.
Mayor Olam.
Here.
We don't have Ms. Hines, but we have a quorum.
Okay,
And
great. Sorry.
Mayor, I also recognize that we have Authority Member Mayor Reed also in the room.
Great. All right. We do have the summary notes from the May 6th meeting. Is there a motion to approve the summary notes from May 6th?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. And a motion and a second. Any further discussion on approving the summary notes from May 6th? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The summary notes from May 6th are approved. We're going to now go to reviewing the FY 2024 to 29 6-year program staff recommendations. Mr. Jasper.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson and members of the committee and Mayor Reed. The meeting packet has a fairly comprehensive presentation document within it. If it's okay, I'd like to not go through that slide by slide, but just get to the highlights so that we can maximize the time the committee has for discussion and action. So the packet includes the NVTA staff recommendations. The very last page, 2 pages of the packet has this, which is a summary of projects and a summary of the summary. So that's what we're talking about this evening. So I say, I'm assuming you've reviewed it or you're at least happy with it, but we're also happy to discuss any content. It reflects the culmination of our holistic process to look at 24 candidate projects, and our process is consistent with previous funding cycles. This is NVTA's 7th funding cycle. At the last authority meeting, I may recall that you approved a go amount of just over $696 million for this 6-year program update. And we have, in our staff recommendations, allocated all of that to, in our recommendations. Of the 24 candidate projects, we are recommending that 19 projects be fully funded per the request that was made. 3 of those projects be partially funded, and 2 projects are not recommended for funding. Again, refer you to the 2-pager. On the 2-pager, there are 2 projects that are not recommended for funding. The row in which those projects are listed is highlighted in pink. And for the 3 projects where we're recommending partial funding, these are towards the bottom of the list. You will see red fonts in the recommended funding and approved phases, columns which indicates what our recommendations are for those 3 projects that are partially funded. So I won't talk about the 19 unless that is something we'd like to talk about. We'll focus on the projects that are probably going to be the ones of greatest interest this evening. And let me start with the 2 projects that are not recommended for funding, one in the city of Fairfax and one in Arlington County. I'd say it's been a long-established NVTA practice to expect project sponsors to cover either cost overages associated with their projects or underestimates associated with their projects using their 30% revenues or other funding sources. And in recommending that these two projects not be funded, we're following our practice in that sense. And I'm happy to go into the background for that in more detail. But one of the things that we really are concerned about, if we do start recommending funding for projects that have previously told us they are fully funded, is that it opens up a broad incentive for project applicants to lowball their project cost estimates, which is an absolutely critical part of congestion reduction relative to cost. It is a statutory threshold that we have to adhere to when making our recommendations. In other words, NVTA must be a priority to those projects which achieve the greatest congestion reduction relative to cost. And if the cost, which is the total project cost, is allowed to vary widely depending on how reliable the project cost estimates are when they're made to us, then it undermines our process significantly if we deviate from that. There are several other reasons why we do that. I'd like to just mention that NVTA's two statutory committees, remember this is a standing committee, the two statutory committees discussed the staff recommendations at their respective meetings last Thursday, June 20th. The Technical Advisory Committee unanimously endorsed the NVTA staff recommendations. The Planning and Coordination Advisory Committee endorsed the staff recommendations 7 ayes to 2 nays. And in addition, they unanimously recommended a couple of extra steps that they'd like to be considered as part of this program. One is to evaluate it's for staff to be directed to evaluate the creation of a policy to address resubmitted projects that have experienced a cost increase, and also to look at the projected long-term benefit. Long-term benefit is another statutory requirement that NVTA has to follow. So to look at the projected long-term benefit to check when a jurisdiction's benefit shares will be balanced. And finally, I'd just like to remind you all that we're almost at the end of the process. We're asking the committee this evening to make an endorsement of either the staff recommendations or something else. And then those recommendations will become this committee's recommendations and will be presented at the July 11th NVTA meeting for action on this program. Apologies, that's a bit rushed, but I say I do want to maximise the time for committee members. So with that, Mayor Wilson, I will end.
Great, thank you very much for that that overview. Are there questions from members of the committee? And I can't see you, so you need to like speak.
This is Mayor Reed. I would like to make a request, if I may.
Mayor Reed, sure.
Okay, so fully understanding the committee's position on the $54 million that we requested for Glennon Boulevard, it has come to our attention that there is a possibility for us to take $5.4 million out of our North Fax project of $18.3 million and allocate that to the shortfall for our Glennon Boulevard project. The reason that this is important is because this project is very close to being shovel ready. Inflation and market costs have undone us. Not that we didn't estimate correctly, but in the last 2 years, inflation has hit everyone. But in order for us to proceed with our right-of-way work, we have to have this $5.4 million, or we are going to be delayed in getting started on that 7 to 12 month aspect of this project until we get funding from somewhere else. And we are seeking some funding from another resource, but we don't know if we will get that funding, and if we do or don't, we will not know until the end of the year, which puts our ability to get this project across the finish line farther and farther out of our reach. reallocating some of the North Fax money to Glennon Boulevard right now allows us to meet the funding criteria to do the right-of-way work now, instead of waiting to find out if we have funding or not at the end of this year.
So Mayor Reed, just to be clear, you're asking to reallocate, you said a full 5.4 million, which is what was originally requested for Blenheim, from the North Fax Network Improvements Project. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and is that money that you intend to come back in the future and request a backfill, or is that money that you don't believe is necessary for the North Fax Network Improvements?
We are going to pursue a different line as far as refilling that money.
Okay.
That is.
All right. Can staff comment on Mayor Reed's request and the thoughts of staff on this request?
Yes, I have to kick off. Ms. Backman is, I believe, online, and she may want to weigh in as well. We also have Mr. Longy in the room. We talk about this from a finance perspective too. I would say that in a number of relatively rare occasions, NVTA has taken action along the lines that Mayor Reed is requesting to basically transfer funds from one project under consideration to another project under consideration within their own jurisdiction to reflect immediate priorities. So I'd say this is not without precedent, but it has not happened at a committee meeting. It's happened at the full authority, which obviously is the only forum at which a decision will be made anyway. So, however this committee chooses to respond to your request, does not deny you the opportunity to make the same request at the authority meeting on July 5th.
Let me ask the question a different way. So were there any other reasons that the staff did not recommend funding the Blenheim project that you want to offer up as explanatory at this point?
As a point of principle, as I mentioned earlier, funding projects that have previously been disclosed that NVTA is fully funded is not like a rabbit hole that we really wish to open, because it undermines the basic thrust of our development process as enshrined in Virginia Code. And we do not want to undermine the totality of the program by making decisions that cannot be justified. But the law does provide for the authority to document why it has not chosen a project that appears to be performing well on investing reduction of cost to fund another project. But in this case, the project that you are looking to take money from is ranked 18, and you're looking to put it on a project which is ranked 10 for congestion reduction cost. So it doesn't change our fundamental concern about funding projects that have been disclosed to us as fully funded. And we understand the issue, and I'm quite certain that you're not the only jurisdiction with projects in the same boat. But I mean, we do really feel that this is a dangerous precedent.
I gotcha. Is that Ms. Hines?
It is. I just want to offer that, Smart Scale is predicated at the state level on fully funding the project at the time of award. And we fund projects in years 5 and 6. And over the last 5 or 6 years that I've been on CTB, we have had projects come back for a variety of reasons that no longer can meet the estimate that was submitted. There is a rigorous process that they have to go through in order to come back to the board for more funding, including, value engineering, including looking at other funding options, a whole variety of things. And one of the key elements, and I say this partly because I respect deeply that we do not want to see people lowball the estimates in order to get funded. One of the criteria that we use at CTV is if this money were in the original request, would it have fallen out of the funded projects in that particular set of projects? So does it fall so far below that we wouldn't have chosen it in the first place? And those are very much discouraged from coming back for extra money unless there are really strong other reasons. There's also, we also do look at how soon is this project going to bid? You know, is this cost increase because we've got bids in hand or we have indications from the market? And again, the question is this of significant, is this, you know, this project of significance enough to bring in money to it? So I do think that and I offer these mostly as there are, I believe, appropriate fences that can be put around this, appropriate checks and balances to not put the authority at deep risk. But I also think you know, we live in a world right now where cost escalation is killing lots of projects, causing lots of projects to rise. And we've invested, you know, millions of dollars in getting these projects to this point. So I offer that. I think I think the authority really needs to take this issue on and come up with some clear ways that it will handle requests because they are going to happen.
Ms. Hines, if I can, at the state level, is there a policy that has been codified reflecting that kind of process that you just described?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Is that Mr. DeFronte?
Yeah,
Go for it.
thank you. I guess it's important to me that it might be unusual, but there are instances of switching out projects, and it appears to me that the city is making an effort here. Full disclosure, Arlington also has a project which I have not had a chance to talk with everyone about, but it came up at the PCAC meeting, which is requesting to swap out the two projects that were in this round, one of which is the Shirlington project with the CC to DCA connector. For folks who haven't been following, this is the walkway to National Airport. And so, you know, I think that I think that there's multiple different years when there's been projects that our staff has shared with us where the policy has roughly been followed, but there have been instances where circumstances have come. Our circumstances are different from yours, but this is also this is part of the Amazon statewide effort. And so I just would say that it seems to me that we should develop a policy that seeks to align with the statewide policy that you mentioned, Mary. And we also need to, be aware of the escalation and challenges. So I'd be favorably inclined towards, the mayor's request, and also feel like I should surface this request, even though I will acknowledge, Keith, you mentioned, and certainly I've tried to have conversations with Ms. Backman as well about the concerns with respect to this. In the statute, congestion, I would argue that the CC to DCA can have significant congestion pieces, but I know the scoring rubric didn't come high. But this is strategically quite important, and the swap is an indication both of the mayor's effort as well as our effort to, Shirlington is a priority for us. We're just saying, hold on that where we have something that is closer to ready and time sensitive.
Okay, so board member DeFronte, I want to try to keep the And I appreciate you're drawing the parallel, and I'll give you an opportunity to talk more about the swap that you're proposing in a second. So are there other questions about Mayor Reed's proposed swap, or are there other comments from either staff or any board members about that request?
Mr. Chairman, this is Monica.
Yeah.
I will note, I think, like was noted, Mayor Reed's request, it's something that we have done in the past. It was done as part of one of our earlier or previous funding programs. And what we would note, it doesn't leave a deficit because the North Facts project has enough funding on it. So for the city to do the swap, it would fully fund the amount applied for Blenheim for this funding cycle. The other thing I will note regarding policies, and I know we're not going to iron that out tonight because this is something we would also have to get the Council of Councils involved in, because our code, while there are some similarities, there are some differences as well. And again, there's the overarching, we don't want to be vulnerable for future takings with people see pots of money sitting. So we want to make sure if the authority adopts a policy that is something that's thoroughly vetted and gives us certain legal protections as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Chairman, this is Mary again. I have one question. So under the practice, Keith, the previous swap that had happened, was it the authority's position then that North Facts in this example, which would be down 5 million or so at this point, so a little bit under $13 million, that would be the extent of the money that the city would be able to ask for North Facts? Or could the city come back later and say, we need additional? I'm trying to get clarity on, you have a couple other things that are partially funded here. I would presume North Facts would now have a red number in that recommended funding column because it's not the full amount requested. And so we have like 4 that would have red numbers. Can those projects come back for additional funding?
To take the second point first, we would have to amend this table to show
Right.
that Blenheim would be receiving 5.4 million from the North Facts project at the request of the city of Fairfax. So in other words, we would not portray this as staff recommendation. We don't recommend it.
I see.
It has to be fully on the authority to propose and accept that.
Okay.
In terms of whether the North Facts project could come back and ask for more funding, I think there would be great hesitancy through the 6-year program to do that.
So what
Because
about
that's kind
Route
of like
7?
double dipping.
So what about Route 7 multimodal, which is showing 100 million less than the request?
Well,
Can Route 7 multimodal come back in a different
Sure.
program?
yeah, I mean,
Yes.
Route 7 is a new project to NVTA, so it's never been disclosed to us as fully funded. Even this, is it fully funded in this slide?
If we fund 210.
Yeah, actually, I take that back. If we funded the 210 they were requesting, it would be fully funded and it wouldn't be able to come back. But because we are recommending less than that, notably we're recommending PE and right of way, preliminary engineering and right of way, then they wouldn't be able to come back and ask for those phases, but they would be able to come back and ask for construction.
And could the authority in its power at the meeting in July say, position North Facts to be in that same position? Basically saying you requested 18, we're giving you 13, and you can come back.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I don't think, I think Mr. Longley would like to add something to that.
We brought it to the table.
Mayor Wilson, if I may, when we have done these transfers before, both projects, as is in this case, were in the same funding cycle. So they were part of the debate. So were the transfer to go from Blenheim, Norfax to Blenheim, then the expectation would be that the city would not come back and ask for additional funding for Norfax. So basically, the risk then stays with the city to find an alternative funding source to complete the funding for Norfax. And that's a pretty critical ingredient, and I think Ms. Hines, that kind of goes to what point you were.
Well, just trying to make sure what the rule, what your perception of the rule is, because actually there's no authority adopted policy on any of this that I'm aware of. Is that correct?
But when we have done this in the past, there was an agreement with the jurisdiction that they would not come back
Right.
from the, if you will, donating project and ask for, to have that money replenished.
All right.
Okay.
So
So-
are there other questions on the City of Fairfax request? If not, I want to move to other potential requests that may be out there. And I know the board member DeFronte mentioned one of those. All right, board member DeFronte, do you want to go next?
Sure. So, I described it a little bit. I'm mindful of time, but the request would be to swap out and the Shirlington funding and have it applied to the CC to DCA funding, which trying to look down the list, they're not quite numbered, but
So you have 11.6 that's in the Shirlington station expansion, and you would like to move all of that. You would like to zero that out for this year and move that into the CC2 DCA multimodal connection. Is that correct? Can you guys hear me?
A full conversation.
You
with the board.
froze Justin for a bit.
Oh, sorry. I said I was just verifying. You want to take all 11.6 million out of Shirlington, zero that out for this year, and move that to the CC2 DCA. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Are there questions of other members of the board on this request?
I have a question, Chair Wilson, Mayor
Ms.
Davis
Hines.
Younger. So
Maybe. Sorry about that.
I don't know all of the background because I've been in meetings, but so the CC2CA, not, it's pink, so not.
Staff not recommended.
Staff not recommended.
That's right.
And so give me background like Mayor Reed did. Why are we here? Why are
Yeah.
we asking?
So maybe and that was probably my fault. I probably should have called on staff immediately after that proposal to let them weigh in. Mr. Jasper, Ms. Backman, do you want to talk about the rationale for the staff recommendation on this one?
Just thank you, Mayor Wilson. The rationale is the same. It's a project that has previously been disclosed to us as fully funded. And I'll make it quite clear about this. When applications are submitted, they're submitted online, and various cost information and funding information is submitted into a single table, which automatically adds up the rows and the columns to tell us what each phase is going to cost and how it's going to be funded. And if it doesn't add up, then that means there's a funding gap. So it's not a question of checking a box to say something is fully funded. It's if there's a funding gap, the math will tell us there's a funding gap. So when this project was submitted to us, it was submitted as fully funded, and NVTA funded, was asked to fund 18 million for the project, which at the time had a total cost declared to us of 36 million. So NVTA was the primary funder. There's some other money from CMAC and local sources. The request now is 21.1 million. The original approval was 18 million. So, and Arlington is requesting NVTA to pay all of that difference. And I'm not aware of other funding options, such as anything you get from Congress or anywhere else, are in play for this project. There are none that I've have been made known to me.
This motion would be for just the 11.6 million, not the full 20.
Mayor, excuse me, Mr. Chairman,
Ms.
if I
Ms.
could.
Ms. Backman.
And I would note, because Keith noted that it was previously funded. To me, that's a side issue. This project was 24 out of 24 for congestion reduction relative to cost, something that we are required by code to give priority to. So it puts staff in the position of, we may have been in a position of having to explain, had we made a funding recommendation to fund this project, having to explain to another project sponsor, another applicant, why we essentially jumped over their project, given our statutory requirements to fund the lowest scoring project for congestion reduction relative to cost.
Mr. Chair.
Board Member Dave Ferrante, go for it.
Sure, I want to try and, I mean, I've looked, there is statutory, there is also public input that I believe is to be considered. How it's considered would be a separate question of statutory construction that I have not looked at to this point. We were under a lot of pressure to submit this. This is a state-funded project, to try and answer your question there. There's a state priority here. This was a key aspect of Amazon's moving, choosing Arlington, but we think it's significant regional benefit because you can drive Manassas Herndon to the airport or park, not at the airport, play those exorbitant rates, and then come and walk to the airport. It's also a VRE hub. It is part of a broader project. We share the desire to be responsible here and engage on this, and would work starting tomorrow through the 11th to try and address the additional funding component of it. If staff has a suggestion as to a mindful that there may be a distinction between fully funding in Fairfax's case and not being able to fully fund in this case, if staff has a suggestion for a project with which to do it, to do that, we would be open. But Shirlington is a big priority for us. We are not pursuing that. We know that we would not be able to pursue Shirlington funding for a period of time as a result. But given that there's not written policy and given the importance of this project for congestion reduction, we believe, and also the broader, those are the factors that led us to apply the way we did. There is, of course, cost inflation. We want to take responsibility too, but that's the best I can try to answer your question.
Mayor Wilson, it's Mary.
Yep, Ms. Hines, please.
So when I look at this program, unless I'm making a mistake, there are only 2 projects that are not funded, not recommended in staff funding, correct? So the issue of jumping over somebody higher up isn't really an issue if what Arlington is asking is to remove the Shirlington bus station funding and move it to this lower ranking project as a reflection of their priorities and the regional impact they perceive from the project. Is that an appropriate statement? Does that reflect the reality here?
No, I mean, it's a fair statement, but the question was asked in a slightly different way at the PCAC meeting. Along the lines of if you didn't recommend the funding for Shirlington, would you go to CC to PCA? And the answer is no, it would probably go to one of those 3 Fairfax County projects which are partially funded because they are above this project on congestion reduction relative costs. So it's hypothetical, but knowing how our process works, it is more likely it would have gone to those Fairfax.
Right, and I come back to the point, and I think we have to keep remembering this at this committee, is this is your recommendation, and we are grateful for your recommendation. It is appropriate per the statute for the authority to exert a different view. And I think it's appropriate for this committee, if there's a consensus on this committee, to suggest to our colleagues on the authority that the committee feels a slightly different arrangement would also satisfy. So I appreciate, I mean, you're defending your recommendation, and that's your job. But I do, having been on CTV when this all happened, and knowing the funding situation in Richmond right now and the willingness of some to actually send more money up here right now, I don't think Richmond is a good solution for more money. But I am mindful, and here is the thing that has been keeping me worried about this is we have now a fully funded Amtrak VRE platform expansion at the Crystal City station. We have a fully funded new east entrance to the Crystal City Metro that is steps away. All of those two projects are gonna move forward here in the next few years. This is the last piece. And if I have learned anything in the years I've spent on transportation, the more we can coordinate and consolidate this kind of work in this tight of a place, the better value we will actually get. When there is no argument about all three of these pieces being necessary to achieve, smooth intermodal connections, to take advantage of all the state and federal investments in the railroad, from Richmond all the way into the district and beyond. This is just the last piece that will let people come from Stafford County, from far western Prince William, from Manassas, on a train and walk across the bridge to get to the airport. And I think that doesn't numerically add up, and I understand that. But I also think delaying is not a good idea, in my opinion.
So, Ms. Hines, your comments got dangerously close to a motion that I would love to entertain. Do you want to make a motion, maybe?
It's got 5:40, right? That's your time period. I mean,
that is when I need to drop off. Yep.
So I've got a motion, and let me see if I've got it right with respect to the city of Fairfax, that takes the 5.4 million from the Blenheim Boulevard project and puts it towards the
No, it takes it from.
the other way around. The other way around. Yeah.
Takes the 18.332754 from the North Fax network improvements and puts it towards the Blenheim Boulevard. That's part one of the motion.
That's 5.4 million.
Oh, 5.
Okay, yeah. So let me. So the two changes that we have heard is taking 5.4 from Norfax network improvements and shifting it to fully fund the request for Blenheim Boulevard, and then your request was shifting all of the 11.6 million from Shirlington to the CC2 DCA. So are you, Board Member DeFranco, making a motion to endorse the staff recommendations subject to those two changes?
Yes, I am. And that's why you're mayor and I'm only a council member.
It's okay. All right. There is a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's seconded by Ms. Hines. Other discussion on the motion? All right, I hear no other discussion unless I dropped off. Unfortunately, I think I'm still here. All right, good. So hearing no other discussion, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. It is unanimous. All right. At this point, we will move on, and I think I'm turning over the proverbial gavel to Ms. Hines. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's correct.
All right. I didn't want to leave a power vacuum in the committee here or anything like that. So there we go. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for dropping off and sorry for being on a schedule constraint tonight. So thank you all. Appreciate it.
for Justin, and while you could. Okay, so, I just wondered because the PCAC also identified the need for some policy discussion, whether the PPC wants to, add its support of having those two policy conversations, one around, help me out, Keith, one around this issue of under what circumstances can people come back, and then the other one is about how long-term benefit, how frequently long-term benefit is calculated. So I would move that we endorse that PCAC recommendation. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, is there a discussion?
Is there any staff further thoughts on those, just to be thorough? Sorry.
No, that's good.
Well, just because our understanding of what has been asked of us is to evaluate creation of a policy to address resubmitted projects that have experienced a cost increase. That's number one. And number two is to look at projected long-term benefit to check when a jurisdiction's benefit shares will be balanced. Two things that PCC wish to
Would those-
recommend to NVTA to.
And those, I think, were unanimous in both cases. And is there any, with respect to either of them, is there any particular thoughts that you as staff might have on them or no?
Mr. Longy.
Thank you. I just want to comment, we actually, when the authority was in its relative infancy back in 2016, 2017, we had established a contingency reserve. And we embarked on a process to develop a policy process for the use of that reserve. That process was about a year and a half with a regional advisory panel being established, led by Tom John in Fairfax County, and I think pretty much a lot of staff participation. To that end, I think this is a good discussion to have at the end,
Yes.
but I do want to be realistic. That took a year and a half. So we're not talking about a policy that would be ready for your decisions, I think, in this 2-year update to the 6-year program.
Right, I don't think anybody thinks they would be ready for July. I think this is prospectively thinking about the next 6-year program. That clarity could be provided, perhaps some procedures could be developed, et cetera.
And so the handout simply goes, these are some of the challenges that were faced when we tried to deal with this in 2016, 2017. We will face those again. Maybe we will come up with better solutions. But in looking at the development of that policy, the regional advisory panel actually said the best thing to do is to not have a contingency. Now, there's a difference between having a contingency fund and opening up an avenue, but there is significant overlap in the issues on this.
I'll just point out, Mr. Longy, that one of the ways in which NVTA is different from how we do Smart Scale is that Smart Scale has a balance entry account. I have a balance entry account for the Nova district. As projects finish up, if they come in under budget, those dollars go into my balance entry account. If I have a project that has an overage of 5% or less, that overage staff can cover that from the balance entry account. The fact that we program 100% of our dollars and that we don't have a way to address cost escalation is to me concerning. And I think we need to grapple with that. I was there for these conversations. And there were strongly held feelings about you put stuff in contingency and it's really rainy day. And I don't agree with that. And I do think it's time, how many years later is this?
And I do recognize you're not proposing a contingency fund, but a lot of the challenges that the region grappled with the contingency fund, we will be grappling with again.
Right. And we're,
And
we're
if
10
I,
years.
oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, I wanted to know, we had two policies, the contingency and then the transportation reserve. And I think this is more about transportation reserve. It is something that we will go back and look at, but we want to make sure it doesn't keep the authority or put the authority in a vulnerable position.
I think
We all know what
everybody-
happened in 2018. And now we're programming out year monies, and we're doing that based on what we estimate that we think we will have. So I just wanted to put that out there. And then for the long-term benefit, as I cautioned PCAC, and we will go back and do this analysis, because we do long-term benefit assessment with every funding program, I don't want anyone to have what I would call an unrealistic expectation that every funding program, everyone will be even
Yeah.
every 2 years, because that's not going to happen.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
that is I really appreciate this. Mike, but I was actually, the reason I asked for a little discussion was a little bit on long-term benefits more than this, because my experience is litigating down to a penny every day is something that I get the glory of constituents doing, and that is exhausting sometimes. But I also feel I still support moving forward with the long-term benefit, because not having any policy in long term, you look at it every year, but I think it's worth taking a look at. But I asked because I wanted to hear exactly what you said, Ms. Backman, and because so
So we do have principles. We do have principles, and we as staff, we go further than the principles the authority adopted. And as I told the PCAC, the principles is a 10-year look back. 50% is assessed on project location. The remaining 50% or what have you is trip origin destination. But then the third component is on completed projects. But just because, the level of completed projects, it changes, from month to month, fingers crossed ideally, but definitely from year to year. So that was something we also looked at when we were looking at these policies. So that's why we as staff want everyone to be aware of their quote unquote running total. And we do the long-term benefit assessment every 2 years with each funding program, which I believe goes a little further than the principles. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you for the comments. Are we ready to vote on the endorsement of the 2 PCAC recommendations? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Did I have a motion? I had a motion.
You have a motion.
And a second.
And a second.
Anyone opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. All right, Mr. Jasper, what else do we have?
Madam Chair, if I could just say many thanks for entertaining this. I have a city council meeting too. So I lovely, and I appreciate all of this. And we are very appreciative in the city for everything NVTA does for us. We really, truly are. You're gonna spend your money wisely.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
We still have a forum, right?
Yes.
Here we go.
Yes, okay,
Thank you.
all right.
Well, let's.
All right, good. So next we have a discussion item.
Yeah, if may I take the first one briefly on the preliminary deployment plan. You are all very up to speed, really. This was really more for the other 2 committees, but we're in the midst of our 2-part work session with the authority. The first part was in June, the second part will be in July. We'll have the results of the online, at least high-level results of the online survey available, and we'll look at the feedback and guidance on those 4 questions on the screen, and any other feedback and guidance you want to give us as we move into the analytical phase.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have questions about that? No. Okay, Ms. Backman, you want to do an NVTA update? You're on mute if you're talking.
Okay, sorry about that. What I would note that, as everyone is aware, July 11th is the authority meeting in which we are seeking authority adoption of this funding program. So thank you to the committees and everyone, staff, my staff, your staff, for all of the hard work, because this is a collective and collaborative effort. The other 2 things I will note is that we will be hosting our very first state of the Regional Transportation Network on October 30th in our new offices. And you're there now, but I mean our 6th floor space. So please mark your calendars and save the date. And we will be doing our annual ITS Transportation Roundtable. Keith, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the date for that is October the 3rd.
October the 9th.
Thank you. See, I'm wrong. October the 9th, but we will send out additional information to you all regarding these two events, particularly the inaugural State of the Regional Transportation Network. And that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay. Does there anybody else have anything for the good of the order? If not, meeting's adjourned. Thank
Thank
you.
Next.